So kicking off then, high performing websites.
Oh, sorry, I talked over you.
That's all right. Kicking off, high performing websites. Right, guys. So to kick off, can we talk about what you know? That sounds absolutely shite.
What?
Tell that again. Today we're going to talk about high performing websites. Can we start by describing what you guys mean by a high performing website and specifically which industry in which you are working?
Yeah, we work predominantly with innovation accelerators, and these are people who are tasked with solving some of the UK's biggest problems, and they generally do it by convening markets, and they find people who are producing products, and these could be products in space, or it could be a product that's going to make the internet faster, or it could be something that's going to improve transport and connectivity, or all kinds of things like that, and they will take early stage projects and help them move through an innovation pipeline so they become fully formed products, and that they, hopefully do the job that they were intended, and then they grow companies themselves, and then they're paying taxes, and then they're employing people. So it's the whole system is built to build more companies to solve problems and employ more people and pay more tax, and therefore the system goes round and round and round. So these companies are often dealing at quite a fast pace because they're innovating in a lot of critical areas at any one time. So there's a lot of what they call innovation programs happening, and innovation accelerators, where they are getting people together and giving them grants and finding funding and pushing them forward, and marrying them with academics. Not literally marrying them, but marrying them professionally with academics. And it's a really interesting place to work. But these websites are mission critical. I mean, they're business critical for a start. They're managed by marketing teams. The marketing teams will be under their own pressures. They'll have a lot to deliver. So how they operate and kind of the processes they follow are quite important. For us, the teams often don't have in-house digital design and tech resources. So, they're not necessarily building their own sites or managing their own products. There's common features that we see. Program applications is quite a big one. We almost meet weekly, definitely monthly. There are multiple programs that are launched, and the programs have to seek applicants and then be judged. And so there's a big kind of application bit of functionality going on. There's obviously service outlines and service propositions happening because they have probably one of the most interesting points is if you're a company, depending on how advanced you are within your own innovation life cycle, you might talk to different teams within the company. So the propositions are quite complicated sometimes, actually. And so you've got some kind of service outline and proposition. Then you've got things like events that people, typical marketing activities like events, career sites. There may be some services to sign up for, some level of e-commerce going on in there. So there's a lot of things happening, I think.
And for lots of different audiences as well, right? Because you deal with, on one side you might be sort of taking applicants for funding rounds. Yeah, on the other side you have a bunch of services that you might be offering to sort of larger corporates and this, that, and the other. Right. So there's quite a lot.
In the innovation space, it sounds like you've got actually really big websites that have to do lots of different things.
Yeah.
They've got to talk to lots of different types of audience about different types of things.
Yes.
And then behind the scenes, you've got a team who are non-tech, non-design, they don't have those in-house resources that can support them in developing that website. Are there specific challenges then outside of the fact that they said they're really quite big? What are the kind of the specific challenges with those particular websites?
We had this conversation a while ago, and we have some principles that we found that we see in all of them, and we do quite a few. So there's typical things. There's about 5 or 6 key things that they must do really well, or that they should do really well in order to succeed. The first one, I think, is good design techniques, because it's quite a complicated, and that's probably a structural design technique and a data collection design technique.
Yeah, because they were not just talking design there, are we?
No, like really good digital design techniques, because the job of these sites is to get data from into the CRM from the people. Because if you imagine it might be 2 years. It might be 2 years since you find this company till you're ready to work with them, but you might be interacting with them all this time. So ideally, we get people registering quite early on in their journey, and then we can start to understand a bit more about them and start helping them out. And we can only do that if we have good data collection techniques, and we design well to collect data well. So I think that's one of the key things. Because you've got a big structure, you've got service outlines and propositions competing for attention, you've got programs competing for attention. You want to capture people not just when they're ready for you, but you want to capture them and bring them back whilst you're warming them up. So I think good design techniques can overcome this kind of poor data quality and help improve conversion rates over time.
Okay,
that's a big one.
It's also what you do, like say with people who aren't quite ready yet. Do you know what I mean? Like it's almost like a passive sort of like there's going to be people who are right for certain programs, and there's going to be ones that don't. But then you can design ways to communicate with them and design ways to get information from them, so that when they are ready, and when they are right for certain programs, they can be alerted and find those sort of things quickly.
So that's the idea of making sure that you've got the ability to collect the data.
Mm-hmm.
But using good design to collect that data so that you're building a profile over time, which means that you can learn about them, but then also track them so that when they are ready to purchase, go to whatever the next step is for them, they're already in the system. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, it is. Yeah. I mean, you could design. We call it a path to purchase, but I mean, people call it various different things. But you're kind of almost defining a typical start point and end point. And then throughout those journeys, where someone might arrive and you suddenly realise that they are looking for this type of program in this industry, or they're looking for funding for this, and they just like that. People kind of have various ways of self-identifying what they're looking for, and then as soon as you know that about them, you can start to, if you can get their details, you can almost understand that this is James Wiley, and he's now identifying that he wants some funding. You can start to take him on the funding journey. And see what he looks at, see what he reads, and give him information based on what he might need. And these people, one thing we've found is these people are really willing, because they're on their own innovation journey. They're actually very willing to give information, because they are they're willing to give information because they're on it's more of a part of a trusted journey, I think. And so if you give them good information back, they're quite happy to part with information, because they're looking to move forward themselves. So it's not like a typical sale, because you're not really selling anything to anyone. You're kind of helping people, So
you mentioned their principles. So the first one we've talked about is good design.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Should we now talk about how your site responds to interaction? Can you go into that in a bit more detail for me?
Yeah.
Number 2.
I think when we were talking about this, it was about
speed of interaction.
Speed of interaction. So obviously, any good website needs to be fast. You know what I mean? And that's fine. There's all sorts of manner of tools out there to test that. Most commonly used is sort of Google page speed scores, which is great. But actually, there's so much more that goes on when someone interacts with something, for example, submitting a form or doing a search, or like I said, like submitting an application, or even when their details are being sent back and forth from different systems. There's all manner of things that can slow that down, which a typical page speed test wouldn't really do. So you've got to have good sort of customer data platforms that they're fast between it, so that we can feed information almost live to and from things, without sort of adding much time to page speed loads, which can happen actually certainly with things like CRM integrations. Sometimes a direct CRM integration is quite slow, and therefore, you log in, it takes a while to pull your information down, and this, that, and the other. So these sort of the sort of speed optimization in those elements is something that goes a little bit unmeasured actually a lot of the time, but is really, really quite crucial. And so imagine, like, if you're in e-commerce, for example, and it took 15 seconds to process a payment or something, that would be a real big problem. So it's the same here. If you've just filled in a massive form that took you 20 minutes to fill out, and then you press submit, and it just goes for a while. Do you know what I mean? You sort of start getting worried, that it's starting to take too long and frustrated. So these sorts of things are really key to those sort of high performing sites, where it really must sort of every interaction must be fast, not just the superficial ones that we can tend to measure on things like Google PageSpeed.
Can I break the tech down a little bit on that one?
Yes, you
can. So we're saying that the speed of your site is crucial for the experience. We know that. We get frustrated by spinning pizzas of doom. So when you complete a form, you fill in your details, you want it to respond to you quickly.
Yeah.
But am I right in saying that Google speed test won't necessarily show you?
No, that's just more about an initial sort of page load. When you really dive into the hood of every interaction on the site, you're not going to be able to measure that stuff on sort of Google PageSpeed. So whilst Google PageSpeed is very important, very important to know that when you load up a page, it's going to load in quickly, and it's optimized, and that it's doing well, so that when people are browsing, that's great. But actually, what often goes unnoticed is then those further interactions once someone's submitting, searching even. Do you know what I mean? Like, so if you're searching through a library of documents or whatever, and it it was taking 5-10 seconds per search, eventually you get really annoyed. And go, that's no good. And those sort of tests and those sort of optimizations are often sort of, like I say, go by the wayside, but are very, very important key things to having actually a high-performing website.
And it's being slowed down because of the connection between the website and wherever it's passing that information to, the CRM.
I mean, it can be a number of things, and like depending on the interaction. But often it's the passing of data to CRMs and things like that. Or, like say, in the case of searching, it can often be that the search index isn't as optimized as it could be.
It leads quite nicely on to our third key point, which is an enterprise structure and separation of business logic and other areas in the site. One of the big potential issues people get when they grow to a certain size is, and then most people like using sites like WordPress. We build a lot in WordPress, and we come across teams who like using WordPress. Sometimes we try different content management systems, and whilst they work quite well, it's hard to train a team. It's hard to train a team of 8 people with a completely new CMS when they're used to working on another one. So we're using sites like WordPress still all the time, but it's like what they call monolithic, which is the whole thing is managed by WordPress itself, and therefore it's fighting with its own resources to do everything that it needs to do. And the more functionality you plug in, and the more users you plug in, and when you plug in CRM integrations, you have to then start looking at those and saying, right, what resources am I fighting for? And then, so the best thing we've found is just to separate everything out, so that we're using WordPress now on pretty much all of our enterprise sites just as a content management platform.
Yeah, that's the key distinction, isn't it? Like, WordPress is first and foremost a content management system, because there's the capability of sort of coding and bolting on top of it to turn it into something more. You can do it, but it doesn't mean that you should. Whereas if you say, okay, we are going to use WordPress for content management and content management only, and then we're going to use digital asset management system over here, we're going to use separate services over here to process business logic, data flow, etc. We have a customer data platform here that's highly optimized for passing through real-time customer data, and then that syncs through to a CRM at the end. You end up with being able to, correctly scale and resource each individual part, rather than sort of combining them all into a singular, like say, monolithic system. So nothing wrong with WordPress at all, but it's a content management system. It should be used for content management. And if you've got things like business logic, which are passing data and payments and subscription data and this, that, and the other that might be happening, those should be separated so that they can be independently resourced and scaled, thus not affecting your performance. But also it's more secure, where if you have everything lumped up into a singular monolithic WordPress install, if it's ever compromised, everything's in there. Whereas these other, if you split it out into the sort of separation of concerns of all the other bits and pieces as separate services, if one part of that's compromised, the rest aren't. And so it becomes a much more secure and faster enterprise system.
So just to clarify then, so for instance, if I was running payments or actually reservations, say, through my CMS, sorry, through WordPress, I'd be perhaps doing that through a plugin. So rather than use the plugin, I would separate that out as a business logic, as you described it, into
exactly.
service.
Because like it's fine to use the sort of plugins for smaller stuff, or even sort of beta test and trial some things, because they're sort of low barrier to entry. But once you get to sort of a larger enterprise structure, you're going to need those separations just for because for security and for speed, and keeping everything lumped together is actually bad architecture for a large scale enterprise. So,
a good example of that would be we would often not store any personal data at all on the website for GDPR concerns. So we have all the personal data for people who are registered on the CRM, which is a customer relationship management tool. Now, every time you log in, which means you have to go and get who that person is, and because we're not storing personal data, the more data you want to get back, the longer it takes. So you have to stagger it, getting it back over time, or you have to work out other ways of doing it. And that's one of the. If you to make that very fast, you would just put all their user data on the website, and you wouldn't worry about the CRM part. But then that gives you a massive security concern. So it's this separation of concerns is something we kind of bang the drum about quite a lot, because it enables it to work faster. But then you have to have the structure that enables it to work fast, as opposed to just directly accessing the CRM.
Makes sense. So that's the enterprise structure.
Yes.
You mentioned earlier, Luke, search. What would you do about search in order to make that faster?
There's a few things, and it depends what you're searching. But depending on the type of, and especially for innovation accelerators who tend to publish a lot of good sort of thought leadership work, you can nowadays start looking into things like generative AI search, where we're able to sort of augment an AI search with your actual knowledge. So we can start looking at if you're an innovation accelerator who's published 100 odd PDFs or even publishing lots of videos and this, that, and the other each week, we can take those and do what we call a generative AI search now, which means it starts to look deeply into the content of all of this body of knowledge that you've published. And you can ask it questions. It's this sort of thing like ChatGPT, but a bit on steroids, really, and for your own data. So then you can start. So then the people using your site can start to, ask it questions and really pinpoint the resources that you've put together, and really get almost down to like the page. We've generated this answer and we've used, resource A, page 9, and we've used video B from minute 1 to minute 3, and you can really help people get to the knowledge actually that you've been publishing all this time, and really get in there really, really quickly and fast, and to the point where that's going to be actually useful for them. A lot of the clients we work with publish a lot of stuff, and over time, obviously, it starts to sort of just disappear because something gets published, it gets talked about a bit, and then it just sort of sinks. With this sort of generative AI search, you can sort of resurface that knowledge, and it can pull from the full library of stuff that you've published, and start to give people valuable answers and signposting to the resources that it's generated it from. So generative AI search, I think, is going to be really, really valuable moving forward.
Yeah, a lot of our communities, we do innovation communities, and they obviously contain lots and lots and lots of very, very specialist knowledge about super niche areas. And being able to string that together through generative AI means it's almost like talking to the experts themselves with the level of answers you get. And I think you don't get that from a lot of other places. You won't get that necessarily from more generic sites, let's say.
There you go. There's your lead.
So should we try and piece together something out of that?
It's fine. Let's see how it comes together with the when we stitch it together.
Yeah, actually, in my head, as you were speaking there, James, actually, I could see then it could go to a blank screen with your title,